Hey, Comics Cubers. Today's guest is Russell Molina, a comic book writer from the Philippines who has written four comics, two volumes of 66, which is about a 66-year-old man who realizes he has superpowers. In international markets, it's called Mr. Tino, Josefina, and 1201. Josefina is also the winner of the 41st National Book Awards for the best graphic novel in comics in the Filipino language. Come check it out. Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. I am with Russell Molina. How are you?
Hey, thanks, Duy, for having me here. Welcome, everyone. Great to be here at Comics Cube.
Should I say the award-winning Russell Molina?
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? It's going to be awarded in February. Tapos,
Yeah, in a few weeks, Josefina, the book that we created, I did with Ace Enriquez, has been awarded
Swan.
the National Book Award, yeah, for graphic literature in Filipino. So very, very happy for that one, and yeah, congrats to Anino also.
Congrats to you, to Ace.
Yeah.
First question I ask everyone, Russ. Why do you
Mhm.
love comics?
Why do I love comics? Um, I guess comics is my portal to my childhood. So whenever I pick up a comic book, I will always be transported to my childhood. When I think about my childhood, it's always comics would always be there,
Mhm.
punctuated by comics. So growing up, I remember having those moments like Saturday haircuts with funny comics. So Sunday parlor visits with my mom, reading Wakasan and itutuloy all of those local serialized comics. I remember reading Wolverine or X-Men with my friends because I didn't have the money to buy my own stuff, so I had to go to their house every now and then to read comics. But yeah, every time I read comics, it's really more like you sort of I get giddy, I get a little childlike again. So I guess it's my link to my childhood, which I really love.
What was your favorite comic growing up?
My funny comics,
Oh,
funny
really?
comics. I really love funny comics. So number one, because it I had access to it because it was relatively
It's
affordable.
cheap. Yeah.
It's cheap, yeah, compared to the Marvels and the DCs then, and you buy funny comics from the store, the sari-sari stores. Unlike you have to go to the mall for like DC, you know. And yeah, I love everything that they dish out. They had I remember they had like a call for like drawings as a child, so you have to submit your drawings.
Hmm.
So I did that. I drew stuff like Super Cat, submitted to them. So it's like a carrot for them that they dangle. So you have to buy more comics. So you have to wait when your artwork would be featured. And it was in
Nice.
one of yeah. I just wish I kept it, but my drawing was there. I think it was Super Cat or Nog Nog, I think, or Nick Nok, I think, or some other character. But yeah, funny comics is one. I wasn't really exposed to the DCs and the Marvels when I was growing up
Hmm.
because because it was really not that affordable for me, and I really didn't have access. But funny comics would be one. I read a lot of Filipino serialized, the Carlo J. Caparas kind.
Yeah.
So my entry to comics was really that. It was really more those serialized local comics, more on the drama side rather than the sci-fi and fantasy action types. So my entry to comics was really more those kind, the slice of life, the drama,
That's
the
an
fantasy.
interesting choice given the
Yeah.
comics that you've made.
So, but when you look at both books, at least um 66, you would see it. You would see
You'll see the
that
slice of life.
the slice of life, that kind of wakasan itutuloy kind of type of writing, the drama kind of writing. It's also there. So heavily influenced, I think, of those genre.
It
So
For us, it's pretty clear that no, you said it. You like drawing.
mhm.
So when did you decide you wanted to be a writer?
Mm. I started actually as an illustrator in the children's industry. So most people think that I started out as a writer, but I really started as an illustrator. I illustrated the book of Egay Samar, Uwi ng Nanay Ko si Darna. Egay, of course, wrote Jano Silang. So I started my entry to children's literature is really through illustration, but it was really, really hard because I didn't have training. So it was really tough. So I had to sort of learn everything along the way. And I guess if I pursued it, I could have, but I felt that my space would be more like in the writing. My space would be more because I get excited whenever I get illustrations from my partners. So I'd rather sort of be surprised rather than be the one surprising. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, it's illustrating for me was really tough. And I wasn't really comfortable in that arena in a way. I wasn't really in my I guess elements whenever I draw. So I would rather write, I guess.
Who were your main influences when it came to drawing?
Drawing cartoons or drawing
Either,
comics,
either.
now or when I was growing up.
When you were growing up,
Mad Magazine.
really.
So yeah, I love Mad Magazine.
Mort Drucker, Bill Elder,
Mort Drucker,
yeah,
Al Jaffe,
Del Jaffe,
who else? Berg, Sergio Aragones.
Sergio Aragones.
So those were my idols when I was growing up. So I was a big fan of, and I would draw Sergio Aragones, the small drawings, right? So when you look at my notebooks, then I had like small drawings of Sergio Aragones type in the edges of the notebooks. I would do that for like my textbooks and everything. So yeah, so heavily influenced by Mad. Um, I love Mad Magazine. Even the folds at the end. I don't know if you
The Al
remember that
Jaffe
one.
foldouts, yeah.
Al Javi foldouts, yeah. So I love those. So even though I didn't have money, I would go to the bookstore and just fold those stuff up and just to see
I'm
what the
sure the
image.
bookstore loved
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. So growing up, I guess that one and Jingle Magazine. Those were the two magazines that sort of um, inspired me to write and to create. So when you look at 1201, for instance, you see like song sheets there, like a Jingle
Mhm.
Magazine type. So yeah, so Funny Comics, Mad Magazine, Jingle Magazine. So those are the stuff that really influenced me.
Russ, what about when it comes to writing? No, like when did you? Because you told me why you switched to writing, but was there a
Mm.
particular moment or a particular writer where you thought I should do this instead?
Comics, you mean?
Yeah,
Comics?
yeah, comics.
Ah, well, I came from the children's lit group, children's lit industry. So
Mhm.
it's a totally different group. But I work with all of these comics fans. So in the office, I'm seated beside Budgetan. At the back, it's Ian Santa Maria with Mervin Ignacio, with JB Tapia, with Bo Guerrero. So I am really surrounded with people who really love comics. And whenever we take breaks, in between overtime and all of this stuff, they talk about comics every time. And I was like the odd man out there, no? So because I didn't know anything about comics then, and
Well,
so
not the
I
comics they were talking about.
Not the comics that they were talking. They were so advanced. I mean, the kind of stuff that they talk about, I haven't even heard of, you know. So at the back of my head, I guess it was always there. And when you surround yourself with people like with that kind of energy, it rubs on you. Eh. So when the idea of 66 came up, and most definitely I thought it won't be a children's book. And I tapped Ian and I told him, you want to do a comic? And I had to wait because he had to finish Skyworld. Yeah, so 66, yeah. So I guess that was a start. It was really not that purposive as writing for your children because children's lit, I really had to study. I attended workshops. I had the writing workshops. I had editors. But for comics, it was really more like, let's try it out. Then after that, okay, I have another story in mind, another story in mind, another story in mind. So it was really more like a happy accident in a way. And whenever I'm asked why you started writing comics, and I always tell the people is because when I started writing children's stories, and that was like 20 years ago with my first book, Magic Seal and Titoy, all of those readers grew up. And I think I want to start the conversation again with a platform that would be of interest to them, which is comics.
You've written four comics. Two of them are in, two of them are continuations of each other. So you started with 66.
Yeah.
The first part was drawn by Ian Santa Maria, who is one of the greatest living artists in the world.
Yeah.
So for everyone who hasn't heard of 66
Or Mr. Tino.
or Mr. Tino, what is your elevator pitch for 66?
Here's a guy on his 66th birthday, suddenly discovers he has superpowers. What will he do with those powers at the age of 66? So that's basically it. So whenever I go to the cons, they ask what is 66 about? That's it. That's basically it. So when I pitched it to Ian and I told him, this is more than a superhero story. It's really more like more emotional, more slice of life in a way, but it would have more heart, I guess. So that was my pitch to Ian when I did 66 initially. Yeah.
Okay. I think I'm surprised by first of all, how do you decide when you're going to call it 66 and when you're going to call it Mr. Tino?
Oh, Mr. Tino wasn't really our idea. It was really Epigram. So I think they did a study on the title on 66 for the international market. And I think they felt that it wouldn't fly, at least for the market. I don't know, maybe something with the numerical thing of 66. I don't know. But they decided...
Too close to 666?
Maybe. So, but they decided that for this market, we're going to retitle it Mr. Tino.
For the international market.
For the international market. Right?
Okay, so
personally, I still like 66.
I like 66.
There's that intrigue and I mean, the title says a lot about everything, actually.
So internationally can be found under the title Mr. Tino.
Mr. Tino, yeah. Under Epigram.
Under Epigram. I think I am surprised, Russ, because when people start writing comics or when people start writing, and then also when publishers take on a project from somebody who's never made a comic, the protagonists usually aren't senior citizens.
Yeah.
So what prompted you to pick a senior citizen as your first thing, as your first protagonist?
Maybe I was just looking for a new spin on the Superman archetype. And when I was looking at if I'm going to do a superhero comic book, I was looking and scanning for like what hasn't been done before. And most definitely, I wanted to do something Filipino. That was really on top of my head. And if I'm going to do the Superman archetype, I'll change everything, the context. Context, when you change the context, you change the story. So it sort of gave me like the same bones, but new skin, new heart, and new soul. And I said, why not make it an old guy? You know, and people are commenting now na it's a commentary on ageism, which they read into the book, but I never really had that intention initially. I just wanted to have like a senior citizen superhero because I guess I haven't seen a lot of those in the market, no, not only locally but also internationally. So yeah, that's basically the motivation for that one.
What is your opinion on that? Because you know the term death of the author. Like, is it important what the author actually intends when it comes to a reader consuming the work?
Yeah, I think once it's out there, it belongs to them. So once I do a story, it's actually for you, and it's really up to you to give meanings and all of these things, no, and try to find the things that you love, and also find the things that you actually hate about the book. But yeah, it's really more about them, the reader, but at the same time, trying to have that conversation with them through the book. So when you look at 66 and 1201 and even Josefina, I love the gaps. So those are the gaps. I call it the gaps, which are not really the open-ended stuff, but I leave a lot of room for the reader's imagination or the reader's um investigation spaces, I guess.
Yeah.
So I leave gaps for them to um to participate, to I guess to encourage them to join in. Some readers like it, some readers hate it because they feel that
It's a plot hole.
it's a plot hole or it needs lot of explaining. Some people love it because they sort of have their own interpretation of it. But yeah, so we cannot really please everyone. But I love those gaps because they sort of participate. So that's my invitation for them to jump in and draw their own conclusion, draw their own I guess filling in of those gaps.
Honestly, Russ, in 3.5 years of interviewing writers, I have realized that the difference between writers and fans is that when fans see plot holes, writers see opportunity.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So and sometimes when you sort of write it, you don't really I guess think of those stuff in a way that a reader would do it. So I do respect how they see the material, but at the same time, it's a totally different lens. So yeah,
I mean, something you didn't consider, but it's there, no?
yeah.
Ian, when I've interviewed Ian says that you're a unique writer to work with because while he gets full scripts from almost everyone else, you wrote a short story and let him interpret it. But the way you wrote the short story was you didn't just give him the plot line or what it was that he was going to draw. You actually wrote a short story complete with descriptions and everything. What is that process like, and what is it like working with Ian, somebody who is so experienced in comics and is obviously so skilled?
Yeah, I always hear him complimenting me about that one. But the truth is, when I started writing, I didn't know how to write comics. So that's the reason why. So I knew how to write short stories, but I had zero knowledge about writing panels, writing captions. So I had to write it like how I would write it. So I guess that's why that came out, no? But now that I'm telling you, so everyone everyone knows. But uh, it was really more like an experiment for me because I never because the succeeding scripts that I wrote already had those panels, the captions, and everything because I started to learn. But I guess what Ian appreciated with that is he had free reign and a little bit of leg room to work on the panels rather than having the writer dictate it to him. Because the way I wrote it, it was really more like mood, and it's really more like not as descriptive as you would write a sequence or panel. So it's really because not really intentional, but that's how I know how to write. So that's why. But when I told him, this is going to be an emotional one, I really skewed the writing towards that.
Okay.
So rather than describing action sequences, I sort of described how the the characters felt, what was the mood of the environment, what was the place like, what did it smell like, so stuff like that, which I think also contributed to how Ian illustrated the whole thing.
Do you
Yeah.
think it would have worked, that writing style would have worked if you were working with somebody who wasn't as experienced as Ian?
Well, after Ian, I had to ask my artist partners because it worked for Ian. So I had to ask, do you want me to write it that way, or do you want to have that the panels written for you and already divided into sequences and stuff like that? So yeah, so they most would opt for the panel style, so writing like describing the panels and everything. But I always talk to the artist partner and really have that conversation even before the writing. So, di ba, Neil Gaiman said it's like a love letter to your art partner, and that's exactly how I want to write it. So I asked them, how do you want to approach this, and that's the way I sort of write it now.
Do you know the Sandman story, Ramadan?
Uh, I think so. Yeah. No.
Yeah, it's the one he did with P. Craig Russell. It's the one that he wrote it as a short story as well.
Uh,
And
uh,
then he let P.
yeah.
Craig Russell interpret it however he wanted.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the difference between writing for comics and writing for an agency?
Writing for an advertising agency.
Yeah, writing for an advertising agency.
You don't have clients. No.
An advertising agency is not going to ask you to make a senior citizen. You're the main person.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
assuming.
Yeah. So there would be a lot of compromises and a lot of testing, I guess. No, but that's a good question. That's a good question because going back to Neil Gaiman, he was saying that the writer is like the director of the film,
Mhm.
and the artist would be like the cinematographer, the acting director, the lighting director. So it's kind of like that. So whenever you write comics, you sort of be the director or have like the overall vision in your head. And when you collaborate with like a co-director, the artist now becomes like the cinematographer, putting in all of these cinematic visuals, trying to cast the right people, trying to have the right camera angles, the right lighting. So it's the same in that way. Another similarity would be the kind of writing that we do in advertising, which is like short. We have to be really, really short. If you can deliver it visually, do it visually rather than having it spoken. So I get a lot of criticism that why do you write too short? So whenever Josefina, for example, there were comments like, "Oh, it was too short. The writing was too short. I read it in one sitting, like in 5 minutes or 15 minutes." it was done. Maybe you should write more. So stuff like that. No, but I wanted it to breathe. I wanted the visual to take over, and those are the things that they do not really see.
Yeah.
But it was really planned out that way. So the way I wrote the manuscript, or the way I wrote the comic script, it was really there. It was, most of it would be silent panels. So, but um, going back to the director's seat, that's how I intended the shot to be. That's how I intended the whole
Mhm.
mood to be, which is really more like silent, and let the visual draw you in.
I think that's a sickness of a lot of comics fans, is that a lot of comics fans do prioritize the written word over the
Yeah,
art.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
In which case, guys, go read a novel.
yeah. Yeah. It's like I think they feel that they're short changed because there's so little copy there, or the words weren't really there. So stuff like that. So, but I do get comments. I think this one's from like Goodreads, and there was a review there that said, I read it in one sitting, and I had to go back. And when I went back, that's when I understood what the vision was.
Mhm.
Even the down to the chapter posters that were placed there, I
Mhm.
sort of understood the meaning there. I knew I was drawn in, and so stuff like that. So I guess it always deserves a second reading in any book, I guess, any comic book. So sometimes you sort of miss bits and pieces of great stuff if you sort of rush also into to reading comics.
Let's talk about 66 Part 2, which is
Mm,
drawn by Mikey Marchan, who,
yeah.
uh, well, two questions. Why didn't Ian draw the second part? And what are the differences between the two, between working with the two of them?
Yeah. Well, before Mikey, um, Kajo took a crack at it. There was
Kajo Baldisimo.
Kajo Baldisimo. So we had one chapter of 66 book two, like an ashcan, like a zine type, which was created by Kajo. I still have it. I think I have a copy here. Maybe it's like a collector's item now. But he took a crack at it, and but very much like Ian, the challenge really was time.
Uh,
And because Ian now, he was working already in Lego in Biland, and he was really very challenged in terms of like a time, and also the time zone and everything. So we had to look for a wonderful replacement. And I read a couple of stuff from Mikey, and I think he would be a good fit in terms of delivering that same vibe for Mr. Tino. Yeah.
okay. Um, and what was it like working with Mikey? Did you also write in that
No, no, no.
short
It was
story
it was
style?
different. It was different. So we had to talk about a lot of historicals about 66, because I had to dump all of these stuff to him, because writing the first book, we really had like a huge conversation with Ian. We went down to how we envisioned the place, how we envisioned the characters. So we had to have that conversation first. So this is the overall vision that we had. And I think that's very important, unlike starting from scratch, because we already had like a book one. So we had to sustain that kind of um, intensity in a way. So we had that conversation first. Then I asked him, "What kind of writing do you are you comfortable with?" And he said, "I think the panel sequences would be better." So that's what I did for this one.
Okay. Um, Next question. Let's talk about this book.
12:01. Okay.
Or do you want to talk about this book?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, this book,
The controversial one.
is
Yeah.
fairly controversial.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and it was published in 2016,
Hmm.
which is a controversial year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What led you to write this book, which is about martial law, the time of martial law,
Hmm.
where the curfew was 12 o'clock. You had to be home by
Yeah.
12, or else they would get you. That's
Yeah.
why it's called 1201. This is, by the way, everyone, this is like a great cover. It's a very simple cover. So by Kajo Baldisimo, artist best known for Trece. Um, so what led you to write this book? No,
That book is.
yeah,
Go ahead. Go
knowing
ahead.
full well that it would be controversial.
Yeah. Yeah. So that book was actually a commissioned work.
Really?
So yeah, it's commissioned by the EDSA people. The EDSA I forget the whole title, but um
The Heads
the
of People Power
EDSA,
Commission.
yes, that's it. The EDSA People Power Commission. So prior to that one, I already had a book also commissioned by EDSA, the People Power Commission, which is EDSA. It's called EDSA. It's a children's book. So after that, they said, we wanted to write for YA, and I think the best medium for that would be comics. So I gave them a couple of ideas, and to be honest with you, that one is the I guess the tamest one in a way in terms of like attacking the story. So you should have read the other ones because it was really more graphic and more, I guess, in your face in a way in terms of like storytelling because because it really was
Wow.
going towards more activism and more like the graphic nature of the time then. So I had to look for a good balance in terms of telling the story, but at the same time being true to historical facts. So most of the stories there were really based on real life. So though it's historical fiction, it's really grounded on something that's real and something that really happened, well documented stuff. So and it's just a matter of just googling. When you Google stuff on martial law, you will know it's out there.
Yeah.
But I had to study. It's a well-researched book. I had to study language during that time. I had to study the environment. I had to study all of these things happening in the youth sector and how they sort of did the protest movement. So music was a huge part of it. Music was a huge part of the protest movement. That's why I felt that it was a good way in for 1201. And after I sort of um, discovered that, everything sort of fell into place. Okay, okay, this is how it's going to go. I just wish that it could have been longer, but it's really more like a graphic novelette. But um, if
Yeah,
it
it's pretty
were a
thin.
little long, yeah, it's a thin book. So I would love to have more I guess flashbacks in terms of like the characters in trying to develop the motivations, but yeah, even the ending had a gap. So was he dead? Was he not dead? Well,
Yeah.
so what happened? So stuff like that. Going back to the whole idea of putting in gaps.
Did you get any
Oh, of course, of course. Yeah, yeah. So all of these red tagging stuff and all of these nasty emails. Yeah. So that's why I don't have Facebook. So
let's
so
explain
I
to our international viewers. Red tagging means you are labeled as a communist or a communist
yeah, yeah,
sympathizer.
yeah,
A lot of the time it happens to people who are anti a certain segment of the government.
yeah.
What can you do? You do. Okay, what's it like working with Kajo?
Fantastic, fantastic. I love Kajo. I love Kajo as he's very professional.
Very.
He brings a lot of ideas on the to the table, and yeah, he's very disciplined. He's a very disciplined artist. So when he says that okay, I'm going to do this, going to do that, so we sort of give him also the leg room to experiment, which I like. So, and I appreciate that with artist partners for you to say, you need to cut this out because I can tell this like visually, or maybe you could have more frames for this one. So stuff like that. It's always an ongoing conversation, which I think, which I really really like.
How tightly did you have to script for Kajo?
How tightly?
How much did you have to fully describe on the page?
Yeah, I had to because it was really more like a different era. So I had to be very descriptive in terms
Ah.
of the look down to how they dressed, what kind of car, what kind of music, so stuff like that. So
Mm.
everything was really very, very detailed because everything was also was researched well, down to the uniforms of the
Of the
police.
police, yeah.
Yeah. So we did a lot of research for that one.
Interesting. Okay, let's get down to this one.
Yeah.
Josefina.
Yeah.
Okay, what is your elevator pitch for Josefina?
Josefina, what if a monster finds her humanity during a time when humans were monsters? So that's basically elevator pitch. So
It's World War
it
II.
actually World War II. So the idea came to me during that time. I don't know if you remember this, but there was a time when the industry, the comics industry, were talking about, should we write more mythical creatures, mythical characters, or should we stop writing all of these manananggas like balangs, and because we've had enough. So I don't know if you remember that discussion, but
Yeah.
there was a time when people were sort of, let's stop this manananggal stuff because all of the comic books being churned out had that mythical characters, no? And I guess my thesis was, no, you should write more. So I think we haven't really scratched the we're just scratching the surface in terms of like writing our own characters because we haven't really done a lot except for Trece, which really um, brought it to life in a big way. But I think we should do more. I
I
mean,
agree.
context changes everything. For example, that Mananaga story, bring it to a World War II scenario, and everything sort of changes. So I would love to see like a different spin on a Tikbala. I would love to see a different spin on a Nuno sa Punso. So stuff like that. So I think we should write more.
Why do you think it is what okay, why do you think it is one that we do keep going back to those things? That's my first question.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think because it's number one, it's whenever you think about Pinoy comics, and I'm always wrestling about this, and I don't have an answer to this. Whenever we think of Pinoy comics, we always go back to that one. No, when you say what's the Filipino brand of comics? No, we sort of the first image that would pop into our heads would be those. Unlike what's a Japanese brand of comics, and maybe a Godzilla would pop in, or like a manga would pop in. No? But for us, I think it would be those. So because I think those are the more graphic characters that we have.
Mhm.
So I guess it's really not a default thing, but it's who we are, I guess, in terms of like So for example, when you ask what's a Filipino what's Filipino food like, our default will always be adobo. It's like a knee-jerk thing for us to say it's adobo. So I guess it's also the same when it comes to comics. What is our brand, or what is comics like? Oh, it's about mythical characters. So I guess that's our default, but doesn't really have to end there. So when you go to the cons now and you see all of these wonderful zines coming out, so tackling different themes and different characters, no? So it's growing. So it's ever growing. No? So you have like manananggal LGBT. So there's a fusion already of something that's traditional with a current cause. So I really love that. So
Yeah,
like
ang jowa kong crosswise.
yeah,
Is the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
title, yeah.
That's it. That's the book. So it becomes like a relevant thing, you know. So we'd love to see a tikbalang with like mental health issues. So it was stuff like that though. So
It's just
we're
called BoJack
bringing
Horseman.
yeah, 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 yeah. So we're bringing traditionally to like a world that is really relatable and current. So I think
I
that's interesting.
Russ, I think the problem is when that whole thing was going on, when that whole discussion was going on, the thing is a lot of people had a very similar treatment to it. Like it
Yeah,
was just very
yeah,
similar to like Trece, to Mythology Class,
yeah,
to
yeah.
Skyworld. And it was like the reason you think there's so much of it is because we're
Mm.
not going far
Out.
enough with it.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree.
And why is it
So
always a tikbalang?
yeah, yeah. So it's actually the same with our horror films. So we always go back to that same shake, rattle, and roll kind of mode,
Mhm.
wherein, di ba, we sort of portray all of these ghosts and all of these mythical characters in that same mold. So I guess that's also why I did Josefina, because we've always treated these characters as the bad, villainous kind of characters, no? And here's Josefina suddenly with a heart, with motherly qualities, no? So a little bit of humanity inside that monstrosity. So we haven't really experimented on that too much, no? To have like maybe a tikbalang with real problems, with real challenges. And yeah, you're right. You're right. So I think we need to write more stuff that really goes and really breaks the mold in terms of how we sort of see our characters.
Josefina is about a manananggal who finds a baby during World War II, and she wants to take care of the baby. It takes place during World War II, so we see soldiers, in times of war. 1201 was a heavily researched book. Is Josefina an equally well researched
Yeah,
book?
yeah, yeah. So funny thing is, it is like a realization also. We don't have too many books on World War II from the perspective of the Filipinos. So Filipino guerrillas, or the ones who really fought. But I got a few books online, and I got a DVD pa. But heavily influenced by those materials when I sort of created all of these images for World War II. It was part of the Barlaya Writers Workshop. So the story was actually a workshop in Barlaya with Adarna House. So we had to look at the story. We had to critique the story, and really how to make it more the plot holes that you were talking about. So how to fix those stuff. Yeah, but more research went to Josefina more than I guess 1201, because I really wanted to get it right. So this one, so I had to watch a lot of war movies. I read a lot of books on World War II even before I started writing.
Did
So that's interesting. That's interesting also, Dewey, for the readers out there. So whenever you do research as a writer, 80% of what you research wouldn't really show in the book. or you wouldn't really use it, but I guess you need it for you to understand your characters
Yes.
and also understand the history or the personal histories of the characters and understand why he does things like this because he was there during that time and in that kind of place. So 80% of what you research you sort of throw out because you have to like edit yourself, but those are important stuff that you would need for your book.
How so you write comics, you have a day job, and then you do heavy research for your comics.
Yeah, I don't sleep.
How
Yeah, just kidding.
how is your time management?
Yeah, so you have to be like well managed. So I have like trusty old school calendar. So I really have to write. So I really make time for an hour for this, an hour for that. So you really need to make an effort to um to find time. And what's interesting is because whenever we start thinking about stuff, we always carry it in our head. You don't really it's already there. So when you're driving, you're always thinking. Whenever you're eating, you're always thinking. So it never really stops that way. And yeah, a lot of time management
Yeah,
because
because
you also have a day job. So
you're talking about how you do heavy research, and do you also plan these out? Like, do you outline them before you write them?
yeah. So of all my books, I guess Josefina followed the comics template or how you sort of produce a comic book. So it started with a character design. I had to do the beats, like outline the story beats. I had to do like a first chapter first, do my own doodles or thumbs for the frame, the panels, and everything. So I had to go through that whole exercise. And it's wonderful that it was part of the Barlaya. And we did it half of the time when we started the Barlaya, we were doing it face to face. And then the pandemic came up. So we
Ouch.
had to we had to adjust and do Zoom. So yeah, a lot of people really like contributed a lot to the story.
Would you like to name them?
Yeah. So of course, Anino, Ani Almario, Kata Garcia, all of the participants of the Barlaya, so stuff like that.
What's it like working with Ace
Oh, I
Enriquez?
love Ace. I love Ace. I've always been a fan of Ace.
Ace is
So
great.
even Ace is great. So even before because now we're office mates. We work
Ah,
in the same office. Before, I was admiring his work from afar. He was doing all of this wonderful stuff. And when I asked Budget, and asked him, who would you recommend? I also asked Ian, and they said, you should try Ace because Ace was like doing. I think he did Bathala, I think, or
I was gonna say I'm a
yeah,
big fan of
Bathala,
Bathala, and I'm
Bathala,
so
yeah.
sad it never finished.
Yeah. So he has a lot actually of unfinished work, and he showed me a couple of stuff that he has been doing in the past, and all wonderful stuff. And I'm doing one more. I can't really disclose yet, but I'm doing another book with him um, for a November release, so like a 2024 release.
Maybe we can
This
talk
one
about that in November.
in November, yeah. But well researched also, and when it comes out, you would know. Yeah. So I guess that's the only thing that I can say so far. Yeah, but it's
Okay,
not a superhero story.
is it about a tikbalang in World War II?
No. It's more current. It's more like now.
Oh, okay. Is it gonna get you in trouble?
I think so, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Russ, is there anything else you would like to plug? Anything else you would like to say to our viewers before we wrap up the interview?
No, just to the guys watching outside of the Philippines, do support Philippine creators. We have a lot of stories to tell you guys. We have a lot of these wonderful creatures that we were talking about, and you have access to all of those wonderful stuff through international publishers. I guess you have Trece, of course, and you have all of the wonderful stuff that's coming out. To the local guys, to all Filipinos, please continue to support your local creators. It's really hard to create comics, especially if it's not your day job. We all do this like a side hustle thing. And please say hello to us when you visit the cons. Try to celebrate the work that you think you love. Try to message your creators and say how much you love the work, because it really means a lot and gives us the motivation to do more.
Russ, so 66 is available as Mr. Tino via Epigram. It can be found online internationally. So it can be found on Amazon, right?
I guess, yeah, or through the Epigram bookshop online.
Are either of these available internationally?
It's not sure, but I think it is in e-commerce sites like Lazada and Shopee.
Okay. And last question, because you mentioned it. As a creator, what did you feel as a shift in the industry when Trece came out as a cartoon in 2021?
So it's a good signal that we are seen in a way, and it sort of opens up a totally new market for our local creations. So it's a big deal, and I celebrate together with other creators the wonderful work that Budge and Kajo have done, and I hope it opens up to more possibilities, more stories out there that should be recognized, because we have a lot of interesting stories, not only from this time, but if you go back historically, we have so much content, so many wonderful stuff that I think deserves a reboot, or even like a reincarnation to a different form. Yeah,
I agree. Thank you, Russ, for joining the show.
Thanks, Doy.
I'll talk to you.
Wonderful.
Hopefully in November.
Yeah. Thanks again for inviting me here.
Thank you, Russ.